Hey, what is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. As you can see, we have our engine and transmission combo ready to get dropped into the 87 El Camino. Now, before we do that, I want to go ahead and cover some of the topics and some of the issues that I commonly see with these 4L80E and 4L60E transmission, and it mostly has to do with how they're installed. But before we do that, let's get with our sponsor, MP Transmissions, who's making this video possible, and let's show you why they built some of the best transmissions around. Hi guys, so we're here at MP Transmission and we're gonna take a little tour of the shop with Ernie, and he's gonna show us kind of what each station does, and you guys can see how the transmissions are built here and they're built to last. So let's go ahead and take a tour of the shop real quick. All right, Ernie, go ahead and show us around.
Alrighty. So right here we just have a spot where we usually just make the transmission check, and you just rebuild the transmissions right here.
Okay.
Here's our dyno where we test transmissions, make sure that they're all reading correctly and all have the correct pressures. And
So each transmission you guys build gets tested to make sure it's
tested, make
shifting
sure
and
that
everything
it's
working
shifting
fine.
right. And
You guys don't just put them together and ship them, let the customer figure it out?
Exactly.
Perfect, all right.
Right here we have our sub-assembler where he subs the transmissions.
Okay.
Basically just has them ready to put into the transmission to be built.
Okay, nice.
Right here we have a tear down station. Here's where we'll tear down, where it's all messy.
So this is where all the new transmission cords come in, and you guys tear them down. And then
we'll tear them down, and we'll remanufacture them from there.
And each transmission is built to the specifications of the customer, right?
Yes.
Horsepower wise and all that stuff?
Yes.
Okay. So they don't just put the same crap in every transmission.
Then right here in this station is where usually the builds happen, where we actually assemble the transmissions in these two tables right here.
Okay, so these two tables are used for the same, you said building the transmission?
Yeah.
Nice. So what do you think sets you guys apart from other shops? You guys been around for how long?
17 years, running around 17 years.
Okay.
And I think just making sure that we put out a quality unit always, testing our transmissions, making sure the specs are right for each customer, and customer satisfaction is what we drive on.
Perfect. So yeah, that's one thing that sets a good shop apart. It's just the customer interaction where after they sell you a part, you're still able to get a hold of them. They won't just ghost you if you had issues with it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, Ernie, thanks again for the tour, and appreciate the transmission. Can't wait to get them installed.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that little tour. So now it's off, back to San Diego, and we got a blanket for these guys. So hopefully they don't get too cold on the way back home. And then we'll get these installed, and I'll keep you guys updated. Now, when I get back to San Diego, we're definitely gonna do a video on some of the common issues that I see people installing these transmissions have, and will be a full-length video on YouTube if you're watching this on Instagram. All right, guys, we are back at the shop, and we are getting ready to go over all the issues that I've seen with the 4L80E. Now, these are in no particular order, so I'm gonna go ahead and just cover some of the most basic stuff that people screw up all the time. So let's first start off with the fluid they use. Now, the fluid you should be using is Dextron 6. You shouldn't be using anything else. Now, it could be a different brand. You could use AC Delco or any other of your favorite brands. As long as it's Dextron 6 or equivalent, you don't really want to use anything else. Now, when it comes time to actually filling up the transmission, this is how I do it, and I've had great success, and it works all the time. So when you have your converter out, you want to put in as much transmission fluid as you can into the converter. Then you're gonna mount your converter in, make sure it's fully in the transmission. After you do that, once you get your engine transmission combo installed, and you have obviously your dipstick installed, you're gonna go ahead and add another 4 quarts of Dextron 6 transmission fluid. And this is before you start it or before you do anything else. You're gonna add 4 quarts. Now, as soon as you start your vehicle and it runs, that means your engine is running, obviously, and your pump is starting to suck up fluid. As soon as you start it, you're gonna add another 4 more quarts of transmission fluid, and you're gonna let it get warmed up. Once you add those other 4 quarts, so you should have about 8 quarts in the transmission. Now this is assuming you have a stock transmission oil pan like we do here. If you have one that takes a little bit more fluid, like let's say it adds 2 quarts or 4 quarts or whatever it adds, you're gonna add that much to it. So initially you put 4 quarts. Before you even start it, you start it, and let's say your transmission pan adds an extra 2 quarts, then you're gonna add 6 quarts into your transmission once it's running, and then you can let it warm up. Now, once you have it running, you can throw it in park, or it's gonna be in park. You can throw it in reverse, you can throw it in drive. I wouldn't say drive it, I would just say run it through reverse and drive, so that way it fills up all those clutch packs with fluid, and then put it back in park, let it idle, make sure you're on a flat surface, and then after it gets nice and warmed up, your transmission fluid should be around 200 degrees. Then you're gonna start checking the transmission fluid and adjusting. So then pull out your dipstick, look to see where it's at, wipe it down, put it back in, pull it out, see where you're at. Now every time you add fluid into your transmission dipstick, you gotta give it a couple minutes to let it settle. If not, it'll give you a wrong reading. So that's how I do it as far as adding fluid into the transmissions. Now a lot of times I see people get way too excited. They'll put in like one of these into the transmission, they'll start it up, they'll throw it in gear, they wanna drive it around, and they don't add more fluid. So the transmission is running completely low on fluid. It might even be running what you call dry. So then they start driving it and all those clutch packs get damaged because they don't have enough fluid. So that's the first issue that I see, is people just don't add enough fluid before they start off and before you start driving. All right guys, so the next issues that I see a lot is with the actual connection of the wiring harness onto the transmission, regardless if it's a 4L80E or a 4L60E. And I'm gonna show you guys how people screw it up and what to check for to make sure you're not having the same issue. Now, obviously right off the bat, whatever harness you're using or whatever computer you're using, you wanna make sure that that harness has specific power, 12 volts constant and 12 volts key on, and a ground going to your transmission. If you don't have power at your connector, the transmission is not gonna work. So what happens when the transmission doesn't work? You only have reverse and you only have second gear. So if you have an issue where it's not shifting, but you think it's working, it's not really working. By default, mechanically, it will give you reverse, it will give you second gear, but it's not shifting into third or fourth or into first gear. So make sure you have power at your electrical connector. This is the pin out here, and this is where you want to make sure you have power at 12 volts with the key on. Now, once you verified you are having power with your transmission, the next issue that I see is with the vehicle speed sensor. Now, on your harness here, for the 4L80E, you have 2 of these connectors here. The connectors are identical, the sensors are identical. You have one in the front, you have one in the back. These 2 sensors are called VSS sensors, I guess you could say, or this one, the front one's called your turbine input speed sensor. The back one's called the VSS sensor. They send the same signal based on the input they're getting. So you can actually swap these around and it's perfectly fine. It's the same part number, like I said. Now the front one, this is on the 4L80E transmission. The front one is telling the computer how fast the input shaft is spinning. The last one, called the VSS, is telling you, it's giving you a signal which a computer uses to determine how fast the vehicle is spinning in miles per hour. Now, some of the issues that I see is, for example, you'll have this sensor here labeled VSS right there, and then you have this sensor in the back labeled turbine speed. This one obviously goes here. The VSS obviously goes in the back. So some of the issues that I see are where people put this harness, the one that says VSS, they'll put it in the front, and then they'll put the one that says turbine input on the back. So the issue you're gonna have is this harness right here, wires wise, is directly connected to a pin here that's telling the computer how fast the turbine input speed is going. So if you put it here or you put it here, whatever signal is getting input into this connector, the computer is gonna see it as a turbine input speed. Now, the same thing for the VSS. Whatever input this gets, the computer sees it as miles per hour. So if you put it here, at idle, in park, your computer thinks you're going like 18 miles per hour, 12 miles per hour, whatever the case is, depends on how fast the turbine input speed is spinning. Now, if you put it over here, it's obviously gonna read 0. This one here, if you put here it's obviously going to read your turbine RPM input speed. If you put it back here, it's going to read 0. So the biggest issue I see is people put this one, the VSS one, they'll put it over here, and then when you're driving, the vehicle sees no miles per hour because your turbine input speed is back here. So it sees no miles per hour, it has no idea what's going on, and it doesn't shift. It goes into default mode. Now, other issues I've seen is where the sensors are actually bad themselves. Now, a quick way if you want to test your sensor is, if you go on your screen and you could read input turbine speed and it's hooked up correctly, let's say you have this hooked up here and it's reading correctly. If you want to verify if this sensor over here is reading, so you know this sensor is reading correctly, right? So grab your VSS and move it from here to here, and now you should start reading miles per hour. That tells you that this harness is correct and that sensor is working, so most likely your issue is going to be this sensor right here. Now, if you have a 4L60E transmission, you only have one of these sensors, and that's your output VSS sensor, which tells the vehicle roughly how fast the car is moving, or the computer how fast the car is moving. Now, if you have this harness from Holley, it always comes with 2 connectors. Regardless if you have a 60E or 80E transmission, it's the same exact harness. Now, if you put this one here, the turbine input speed sensor connector, if you plug that one in here, which it will plug in because it's the same sensor, if you plug it in here, your vehicle will never read miles per hour, or your computer will never read miles per hour, so it will never shift, and that's on the 60E transmission. So you definitely want to make sure that you have the right connector plugged into the right sensor. Now, one of the last common issues that I see all the time is with this connector here, the way it's plugged in to the transmission is usually incorrect. Again, if that happens, you're only going to have reverse and you're only going to have second gear, so it won't be shifting. Now you see this has an arrow, the other side does not have an arrow. The arrow on your 4L60E transmission is going to be on the other side, and it will be pointing out. The connector will be here, the arrow will be pointing out, and that is the correct way to plug it in. On the 80E transmission, your connector is pointing up, and it will be plugged in this way here. If you put it in backwards, like this, and the arrow is pointing down, you can physically jab it in there because the pins are the same, or as far as the pin holes are the same either way, this way or this way. So you can physically go in there. It's gonna be a little bit harder, but you could jam it in, you could squish it in and make it fit. If you do that and it's upside down on either side, the 60E or the 80E transmission, if you put it upside down, you will go into default mode. You'll only have reverse as second gear, and everything else will be correctly, your miles per hour, everything else will be correctly, but your transmission will not shift. So make sure connector arrow is pointing in the right direction. So other issues that I've seen with other installs is your torque converter gap. Some people don't check that. If it's too far out, you'll be pulling the converter out of the transmission, which will damage, which will maybe disengage the oil pump for your transmission. Sometimes the gap is too tight where the converter is too far into the transmission. I have made videos on how to check that, and you guys go ahead and check it out. It's not that hard. Other than that, that's some of the main issues that I've seen with the 4L80E or a 4L60E transmission. If you buy a 4L60E used, it's probably going to be worn out to a point where it might slip if you're running too much horsepower behind it. They don't handle that much horsepower to begin with. These 80Es, a stock rebuild will handle around 750 horsepower. As always, guys, if you guys want a new, freshly rebuilt transmission, definitely hit up MP Transmissions. They have some of the best transmissions around. That's all I use on my vehicles. This one's gonna get it. The Chevelle has one. My truck over there has one, and no issues at all, guys. I highly recommend these guys. As always, guys, if you guys have comments, or maybe you guys had issues on your transmissions, comment down below what your issue was and how you fix it. And I will see you guys on the next video.